Awesome. Great to be here, everybody. I'm also a founder and went through 500 startups, and I love these events talking about early stage. I love hearing all the stories from everybody. Yeah, great to be here. My name is Lucas Matheson. Today I'm going to talk about decentralization and our financial ecosystem and what Coinbase is doing to update our financial system in Canada. If I can get this to work, we're going to be good. This back. Got it. I know I can do this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so self-custody, right? Self-custody, this idea that we custody things ourselves, right? This idea has been around for thousands of years, and in fact, humans have been doing this for a long time. We self-custodied pretty much everything that we had for thousands of years. And eventually, we had emperors that created treasuries, and they centralized those treasuries within their kingdoms. And eventually, we had so much money in the system that private banks created, entrepreneurs created private banks to store money. That's how much money we created once it hit the public system. And then in 2009, we obviously met Bitcoin. Satoshi wrote his white paper, and we realized for the first time that we could solve a lot of the problems of a highly centralized financial system. And so when you think about Canada's economic, if I could get this slide to go. There we go. So in Canada, we have 6 banks that control 90% of our banking market, so 90% of the money in our bank. We have one of the most centralized economies in the world. And when you think of what that centralization does, and the assets that we have in Canada, 85% of all the assets, domestic assets that we have in Canada are controlled by these 6 banks. And so when you think about innovation in Canada, when you think about risk and investment into your startups that you're building, and you think about the risk profile that we have, 85% of domestic assets in Canada are what I think of as bank risk. And so what banks are allowed to do, which is interesting in Canada, and how our system works, is that banks are allowed to effectively take our resources, multiply them by 12 through fractional reserve lending, and invest that money into the economy. Right? Once that money's into the economy, if I can get this slide to work, sorry. There we go. So the idea of these systems is to multiply money and invest into the economy. And the idea and how our financial system works in Canada is that profits are ultimately created within the system and passed up to shareholders of banks. And so when we think of this financial system in Canada, there's a couple of things that we sort of think about. The difference between this old system, this traditional financial system that we had, and this updated system that we are building around decentralization, around empowerment. And so this is kind of how we think about the old system and the new system in finance. When we think about the old system, we think about big 6 banks, we think about centralization and control, we think about speed and how expensive it is, we think about how opaque that system is. This new system that we're building, right, this transition to a digital economy is very much about anyone can use this with an internet connection, right? This is a system that treats everybody the same. This is a system that's fast and cheap and transparent. But the ultimate goal here is that the new financial system is equitable. And that's one of the reasons why I think in Canada, our system is going to be fairly easy for people to understand. And Coinbase, we operate all over the world. Canada is the 3rd most crypto-aware country that we operate in. And one of the reasons I think is because of the values underlying digital assets. What am I doing for time? And these are the values, right? Equality. The idea here is 7 billion smartphones in the world. Everyone can access them. Transparency is what blockchains are all about, is the idea that we can operate in a transparent system. Inclusivity, I mean, that's what technology does. That's what many of you are figuring out how to do, is how to democratize access to things that were really hard. And that's what Shopify did for commerce. That's what OpenAI is doing. That's what YouTube did for creators. That's what Coinbase is doing and crypto is doing for the world. We're democratizing access to finance. And the idea is not for the system to operate all on its own. The idea is for us to work with the traditional financial system and integrate it. And that's why all the rules around the world are changing, right? 85% of jurisdictions around the world are going to be introducing new regulation around crypto. And that's going to change how these two systems work together more seamlessly. And when we think about Canada, what's coming up in Canada? What do we need to create a strong financial system? Well, we need to adopt technology in Canada. We need to make it easier to get money in and out of the banks. Currently, our big banks don't bank crypto trading platforms, so we have a lot of work to do in Canada to work more closely with our banks. We need a stable coin in Canada so that we can pay with digital assets. We need to allow people to accept digital assets for their business, which currently most people pay about 3%. We need to make it easy for people to use, and remittance is a huge opportunity in Canada. 1 in 5 Canadians remit money, 6 to 12% in fees. That's going to change fairly quickly. Foreign exchange is another incredible use case for Canadians, and institutional partners. We're seeing a very big shift from retail-focused, sort of speculative ecosystem into a more of a institutional grade ecosystem where we have banks, we have large institutions investing in digital assets. And then obviously regulation and policy, which is something that we're very, very keen to work on as an industry. Coinbase has recently been registered as a restricted dealer. It took us years to get registered. We operate legally in Canada. It's a huge accomplishment for us, and something in Canada we're actually quite further ahead than the rest of the world. And I want to talk quickly about this, which I'm most excited about if you care about crypto. We are effectively tomorrow launching Stand With Crypto in Canada with our industry. And if you care about crypto, if it's something that's important to you, I encourage you to take out your phone. I encourage you to sign up with that QR code and share this with people that you know, because where we are in the world right now in Canada is that we have a regulatory framework, we have strong crypto trading platforms operating legally in the country, and what we need now is our political leaders to hear from Canadians, their constituents, about why digital assets are so important. And this is really the ultimate goal. We need our laws to change in Canada. We need members of parliament to understand crypto better so that they can help change our laws. And Stand With Crypto is a movement for us to connect policymakers with entrepreneurs like you who are building in Web3 so they can understand how powerful this technology is and why Canada needs it to compete in the world. And it's if you guys are going to Futurist, or if there's any crypto folks in here, hopefully you'll see this QR code all across the conference. I'm going to be doing opening remarks tomorrow for the conference. This is something our whole industry is trying to rally behind because it really is incredibly important. My last slide is just Canada needs to do more, right? We are falling behind a little bit in terms of our adoption of digital assets. The world's moving very aggressively to transition their economies to a digital economy, and Canada needs to do better. And so we're really keen to engage more with the public to help voice your concerns and your support for an industry that is going to transform all around the world and revolutionize our financial economy. So thank you very much, and happy to answer a few questions. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. I have a question about remittances. So I agree, remittance is a huge opportunity. But the challenge with remittance surely is that the country where the funds are being received, you also have to have the regulation in place there. The countries that are receiving the remittance, the huge part of why they focus on collecting that and encouraging citizens to send it back is to get their hands on foreign currency, freely convertible currency, for their own currency reserves. It's been a big issue for countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka in recent years. So how do you mitigate that using crypto and work with those governments who are at the other end of the remittance pipeline to get them on board and not to see it as a threat to their foreign currency reserves?
Yeah, it's a great question because what's happening in the world is USDC, as an example, is being used mostly outside of the crypto trading platforms in what we refer to as DeFi, decentralized finance. This is permissionless access to blockchains where you don't go through an intermediary like Coinbase, but you interact directly with a blockchain or a network. And so a lot of remittance, I expect, will be conducted on-chain outside of CPT. So I imagine you will have a Coinbase wallet. So Coinbase, if you're not familiar, we have two sort of apps. One is Coinbase, which is an app that you KYC into. You connect to your bank account, transfer money from your bank account, you buy digital assets. And then we have a self-custodied wallet that only you have access to, that you custody your own assets, and you can interact with Web3 and blockchain. And with that wallet, you can interact with technology all over the world and participate as a human being on a public infrastructure, and you can make decisions all by yourself. You don't need to go through an intermediary. So I think the question you're asking is really around KYC and AML compliance. And frankly, we have not really crossed that bridge in terms of a regulatory perspective around the world, but it's top of mind for regulators. And just for context, we work very closely with regulators to build a strong regulatory framework in Canada, and it's starting with very simple things like being permitted to operate in market, working on into basic things like leverage, and hoping to expand the amount of products and services that are available to Canadians, because our crypto trading framework right now is very limited. While it's there and it's great that we have it, and we're very happy that we have a regime and we can operate legally in Canada, it's actually quite narrow in scope, which just means that we have a lot of opportunity to expand that over the years as we build trust with the public, we build trust with the government, we build trust with regulators. I don't think I'm controlling the questions here, but I see hands.
Hey, how are you doing?
Oh.
Admittedly, I work for one of the top 6 banks in Canada, and one of the things...
I'm so sorry, could you speak up?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's a little better?
Yeah.
So admittedly, I do work at one of the top 6 banks in Canada, and one of the things that we have to design for at the moment is open banking. I'm just wondering, because we kind of like have to open up like digital data of customer profiles, et cetera, like how is Coinbase and other crypto companies dealing with open banking?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think like at the core of open banking, right, is a concept around competition, right? It's like how much competition do we want in Canada? And Canada is a country that's formed of pretty much oligopolies in every category of industry, right? From TVs to cell phone to or networks to, you go through the trains, you go through all the industries in Canada, and there's like usually 4 or 5, 6 companies that are dominant in those areas. And that's a challenge for us as Canadians, because we have one of the most outdated financial like infrastructures in the world here because we lack competition. And so open banking is going to open up the ability for fintechs to compete for customers' attention in business. And that's incredibly important because we need banks like the bank that you work at. We need banks like yourself to be more aggressive in how you innovate and bring financial technology to Canadians, because we frankly haven't seen a lot of innovation in our financial system here in Canada. And so I'm really excited about open banking because it's going to allow companies like Coinbase and other fintechs in Canada to participate in building a primary account or a secondary account with Canadians. I think the question was, have I seen open banking work properly? Is that right?
Can we get a mic there?
Outside of Canada, have I seen open banking work successfully? So I'm not an open banking expert by any means, but I would say there's a lot of areas in the world where we need to think about data, right? Data is a really important part of like you and our experience in the world as digital people in a digital environment. I'll just share really quickly, like my personal challenge right now as a person is that when I interact with the digital world, with the internet, when I go on the internet, I don't know who people are. Right? I don't know who's emailing me. I don't know if they're real. On Twitter, I don't know who's real. Who's writing the news, I don't know who's real. There's a lot of challenges right now with just a basic identity on the internet. And unfortunately, when we created the internet, we forgot about the 2 very important ingredients. One was identity and one was how to move money. And those 2 things we're figuring out right now. And so I think to answer your question, it's a long-winded way of saying I think digital identity is a very important ingredient in our experience in the world. If I could flick a switch on LinkedIn or Twitter and only interact with verified human beings, I would do that. That's something, an experience I want in the world. I just want to interact with real people. And that's important to me. And I think just as a person, that's a personal opinion. But I think digital identity at the core of it is really important, and we're seeing countries all over the world moving much more aggressively. But our government is looking into it. Our federal government did receive funding to explore digital ID, and so it's an incredibly important ingredient for Canadians to have, because it's a powerful tool for you to be able to control your data. And I'm not sure open banking, I probably would have liked to see personally as a Canadian my health data be better organized so I can own that and use that how I want. They started with open banking, which is a huge challenge, but it's, as you know, it's been a decade in the works, and we're excited for it to come online next year.
I think that's all the questions. I'm going to throw one for you. Why did you join Coinbase?
Yeah, so I opened my Coinbase account in 2014. I I was living in Silicon Valley. I heard about Coinbase and what Brian was doing. I was at 500 startups in an incubator with a bunch of maxis, ended up buying a bunch of crypto, and I basically fell in love with crypto ever since. I was lucky to be one of the founding members of Libra when Facebook spun out their Libra platform. I got to start the crypto project at Shopify and sort of think about a whole bunch of really cool things around commerce, the intersection of commerce and digital assets. And ultimately, I took this job because I'm really concerned as a citizen of this country that we're going to fall behind the rest of the world. Canada's not innovating enough. As you know, we're the least productive advanced economy of all the OECD countries. We're struggling in a lot of areas, and so we need to be more aggressive as a country in adopting technology. And so I'm a huge proponent of advocating for our government to adopt technology, to use technology, to drive more efficiencies, because our economy isn't competitive right now. And the only solution available, and which every other country around the world is looking at aggressively, is technology. Looking at technology and scaling their efficiency with technology. And I don't feel that in Canada, I don't feel like we're doing a good enough job at really taking technology seriously as a government.
And can we get a
Thank you.
round of applause?